Life was good. Didn't have a worry in the world. Everybody was happy until the residential school got in the way of everything.
We all know children aren't born racist. They're taught to be racist in how they look and view people in the world.
I think Canada has always had a very strategic and very straightforward method of assimilating and getting rid of Indian people.
We have so many Indigenous women who have gone missing. We don't know where they are. They've just disappeared off the face of the earth.
In this day and age, we know history has always been written according to the alleged victor. There's no victor in Canada unless you call a thief victorious.
The Indian Act was implemented in 1871, and what happened was the Canadian government took several of our people by force and put them onto a reservation. And they were given numbers. They were registered according to these numbers. The government was clever with relation to how they were going to impose this new system on our people. It was a system of assimilation, and by that cultural genocide, the Indian agents, so to speak, also took children and took them to the residential school.
So residential schools in the very beginning were brought about by the government, basically to kill the Indian in the Indian. And they wanted to civilize Indigenous people just for the simple fact that they wanted the lands that it came down to. And then it became law that Indigenous children attended residential schools.
I was one of those kids. My foster parents hid me away somewhere where they can't get me. But eventually they did catch up with us. So I stayed in residential school for, I don't know, a couple of years. Life wasn't so good there. We could not speak our language. We had to talk English. We get caught talking native, we got punished for it. And when you got the straps, you cannot cry. You just had to hold everything. You just hold your breath till they finish strapping you. In a plane, drop on your knees and you put your hands out like this. You don't dare make face smile or say ouch or anything. That's how they said they were going to make us civilized. They didn't prepare you for work. They just tell you, we just got to teach you how to act like white people, talk like white people. How am I going to be white when I'm brown? And one day I found out I had a relative living close by. Oh, God. I used to go ask to see her, but I was sorry I did because the priest that took me They just took me somewhere else. And it seems to me. When you go back to the school, you tell the mother superior about it. All she did was she said, "You're just lying because you want to go home." They just called me liar and punished me. I had a girlfriend. I told her I said, next time I'm going to when I visit my cousin, I said, and father wanted to take me there. I said, please come with me. And then she asked me why. So I just started crying, and then she said, oh, I know why. He does that to me too. So we thought we were the only two that he did that to. Little did I know, half of the girls in school and boys, I didn't even want to hug my kids when they start getting older because I felt too dirty and ashamed, because I kept thinking I'm not worthy of this, you know. And I drank a lot to forget. Lots.
The Indian Act was created for one purpose only, and that was to kill the Indians. It was to get the Indians out of their way and in support of their industrious leanings. On our side, I call it rapacious plundering.
They wanted to kill the Indian, and then they left an empty shell of people who hated themselves, hated their culture, the color of their skin. They were completely lost. A lot couldn't go home because when they did go home, they didn't speak the language. They didn't know how to integrate back into their communities.
There was mass graves outside residential schools. These kids were abused either to death, like either like malnourished, or beaten to death. And their parents were told something else. This isn't something that you forget. This isn't something that you can just get over. And a lot of people think that this is our ancestors. No, this is my grandmother. My grandmother's still alive.
I just put it away and I didn't talk about it. I didn't want to think about it, so I just buried it somewhere.
I started encountering racism directly when I was really young, somewhere between 4 and 5 years old. It was then that I would hear epithets of any sort, Indian, dirty Indian, squaw, redskin. As a 7-year-old girl, just walking along the street, and a group of men and their kids and their dog were out in their front yard. And one of the men thought this was a great idea to sick his dog on me. And they all cheered, telling that dog to get that little redskin. And it did. It dug itself into my ankle. I still have those scars.
I believe it's the Roxy Cabaret, is what they called it. I had some baggage on me, so I asked if I could coat check my bags. And the guy said, we don't serve people in moccasins. And I thought he was kidding. He told me to go hunt buffalo outside. There are no buffalo in there. He threw my shoes out the door and he put me in a headlock and he dragged me out. And while he had his arm like this, he punched me in the face, in the jaw. He pushed me out and he said, you're just a fucking prostitute. The Vancouver police showed up and a police officer jumped me. She didn't say, "Ma'am, you're in distress. What happened?" She just jumped me. She jumped me. Which, after being assaulted, now I'm being assaulted again, and it's by a police officer.
I asked a former prime minister who gave me a phone call one time to set me straight on racism in Canada. He said to me then, "You can't say Canadians are racist. You can't say Canada is racist."
There was so much racism. So much racism. I was assaulted by a man. I went from this beautiful, proud young woman to having to second guess and live in fear afterwards.
When I was 5 years old, I was assaulted by an uncle. And also when I was 11 years old, I was raped. The year 2000, I reported the rapes that I incurred. And the RCMP officer just kind of conveyed that he either didn't care or something, and, let's just get this over with. The questions that he asked were even more horrendous, such as, did you orgasm when you were assaulted? Then another question was, what kind of panties was I wearing? So what kind of panties would a 5-year-old and an 11-year-old wear? Reporting it to the RCMP did not help. Both of the cases were closed, so I just kind of felt helpless.
It's pretty much systemic bias. So it's rooted right from, getting stopped by a police officer, getting profiled, getting, we're pretty much considered guilty before innocent. We're not treated like people. We're treated like animals. I know that all we want is to be treated like people.
I was exposed to sexual abuse ever since I was like a little kid. I never really opened up about it to anybody. I was brought to a party and I passed out, and I must have been 14. All I remember is like a belt going around my neck, and he took off my clothes and everything. He threw me against a wood stove and I burnt both my hands. And I left. I remember not having shoes. I ran out without shoes. Everybody has been through sexual abuse in the North, and it's just completely normal. That hasn't changed, and I think it's only gotten worse because how many Indigenous women go missing every day in our country? How many of them are mistreated and not heard?
The number that is out there is probably underrepresented. I have friends that work in the downtown east side that say that there is upwards of 4,000 people missing.
There have been a number of women who've gone missing in my family. For the most part, we found them all. Right now, there are still 2 missing. One went missing July 7th, 2019, and the other one went missing in 1988. We don't carry any hope for the one from 1988 to come back. And isn't it so strange that we can actually talk about our own relatives in terms of dates? But that's the underline to that point. Nobody gives a crap about Indigenous women.
It's terrifying to know that you can't really go anywhere, and that you could become one of those missing and murdered Indigenous women. And my fears of being forgotten, because a lot of those cases are unsolved.
Personally, it hit me when a friend of my daughter's went missing in Penticton. The urgency was not there because of who she was. We went through that whole process from trying to form some sort of communication with the police to trying to give them our information to finding her body. They didn't do a good job. They didn't react with the urgency that they needed to. It ended up that, unfortunately, she died on the mountain. She didn't die in the home where she was attacked. The attitude of the RCMP when they know someone's gone, it's the blood is on their hands as well as the perpetrators.
Our women go missing across this entire continent daily. It's been going on since they created that Indian Act. And it's all complete and utter Canadian political bullshit.
The predation of our women is a systemic thing. We all are born with a target on our backs. And it's really a hard and a heartbreaking thing to have to tell your children that, and it's even harder to tell your grandchildren that. To explain to them why nobody thinks that your culture means anything, that your existence on your land means nothing, that your ancestor means nothing. It's heartbreaking.
It said in Supreme Court, it was a 100% win for me. It's ruled as discrimination. They have that support. I've left that behind for whomever. I am half Native, and you can't beat the Indian out of me. It's not going to happen.
We are resilient because our land is resilient. We're resilient because our culture is resilient. We are the strongest people that I know. We are the most powerful people that I know. I think the only way they could have stopped this is to kill every last one of us, and they didn't.
This is our home. This is our home before Canada. And Canada is a visitor.
Canada doesn't have a home. We have a home. Will our home be our home again? Yes. Will our lands be our lands again? Yes. Canada will have to figure out what it's going to do with that.
I'm wishing for a better life for the younger generation. I don't think it really ever goes away. There's always something reminding you, whether somebody says something or not. And you go back to that hole that you don't want to be in. I love being a grandmother. I've got my grandkids and everybody to keep me going, so I'm a lot better than this past couple of years. I've been the happiest I've ever been in my life.